Inflation has led to high cost of living for the average citizen. Okay, in that things are not affordable anymore. Even basic items are not affordable anymore. I don't know if you eat Indomie in your country, but Indomie some years back was just 30 naira. Or I just get one for 30 naira. But right now is around 100 naira. So look at it. Within how many years the price has kind of tripled. Alright, 30 to 60 to 90. And you're having 100, maybe 120 some places. So is that bad, right? Between how many years? What is the time frame? All right. Then there's this increase in cost of raw materials for businesses as well. Okay, so inflation has led to high cost of living for people, average citizen. Okay, and has also led to higher business operation costs. All right, higher cost of operating businesses, in terms of raw materials, in terms of even salaries that people might be demanding as they are responding to inflationary pressures in the country, and so on and so forth. Okay, and from there I also talk about another problem that inflation has been causing in the country, which is low living standard. So here I have the point as inflation coupled with unemployment and policy somersaults of the Nigerian government and its central bank, among others. Inflation has led to low living standards. Okay, and from there I also continue that inflation and the resulting weak exchange rate, because right now as I'm talking to you, a dollar is equal to 670 naira in the country. Like, damn, right? At some point it was a dollar to maybe 100 and something naira, maybe 150, 180, maybe 315. And these things happened, I'm talking about between how many years now? Maybe in the past 3 years, we've been having a serious weak exchange rate, and it's just so bad. So right now we are kind of closing in on a dollar being equal to 1,000 naira. All right. And what has been the implication of this? The implication is that students abroad, or parents that have children abroad, okay, studying in foreign universities, are finding it difficult to pay the school fees because they have to make these school fee payments in dollars. So dollars are scarce now, and they're finding it difficult, to pay school, because now you have to use more naira to buy the same amount of dollar that you're buying before. So if you say we have $1 equals 670 naira, and it was maybe $1 equals 350 naira before, so you just need 350 naira to get a dollar, but now you need 670 to get it, like twice of the amount that you require the previous period. So now it is getting difficult to pay school fees of students abroad. So these are problems. But now, have I been able to relate these problems with Nigeria's economic growth? Have I? So I just mentioned that, okay, there is high cost of living, high cost of operating businesses. I've mentioned poor living standards. I've mentioned inability or difficulty in paying school fees of children abroad. But how do all of these things impact Nigeria's economic growth, which is where you have to pay attention? Now, I was saying that in your problem statement, whatever problem that you're writing must be related to the subject matter. All right. So how do these things affect Nigeria's economy? So one, so as I'm explaining that inflation, has led to high, cost of living. So how does that affect economic growth? High cost of living, okay, simply means that the naira is weaker. Okay, no, yeah, inflation simply means that inflation now simply means that people's purchasing power has reduced, other things being equal, and they can no longer afford, basic things. Now, as long as it's not just basic things that they could afford, quite easily before, is now getting relatively, difficult or expensive to purchase. So the implication of that on the economic growth is that it reduces aggregate demand, at least in the domestic economy. So it reduces aggregate demand, and if aggregate demand is reducing, firms respond to demand. So now the demand for their products are falling. So what then happens to the supply? It begins to fall. And look at it, GDP, economic growth is measured as an increase in GDP. Now that firms are responding to the fall in aggregate demand, that means they are going to be producing less than they were producing before, and that lowers GDP. You understand? So this is a problem. Inflation is reducing people's purchasing power, which is cutting back on aggregate demand, and aggregate demand is leading to what? Aggregate demand is leading to the economy not growing. Okay, so it is hampering economic growth in the country. See, that's an example. Now, another one, when I was talking about increase in the operation, increase in the cost of doing business, because firms now have to spend more on raw materials and other things. In fact, in Nigeria, it is kind of detrimental, uh, basically because a lot of a lot of input into Nigeria, a lot of um, the inputs that Nigerian companies use or Nigerian manufacturers use are sourced from abroad, like they are imported. So now that inflation is leading to a poor exchange rate, okay, so the cost of importing their raw materials is is increasing, and as the higher the cost of production, because that's automatically translating to cost of production. The higher the cost of production, other things being equal, the lower the production that's going to happen. Okay, so the higher the cost of production, the lower the production. That means you are cutting back on GDP. Okay, and that is not economic growth. Your economy is slowing down. Your economy is contracting. You can see. So these are things that reduce economic. It's not just even reducing economic growth. It's kind of eliminating. There is no growth. Here, everything is just going back. Everything is being drawn back. So you can see how the problems that inflation is causing is affecting economic growth. Now you can as well also go into, I think, the second one that I mentioned when I was talking about poor living standards. Poor living standards as a result of inflation. Okay, coupled with unemployment, not just coupled with unemployment, creates increased crime rate in the country. And right now in this country, we are talking about what? We're talking about banditry. We're talking about unknown terrorists. We're talking about unknown bandits. A lot of people are going into crime. A lot of people are going to kidnapping and so on and so forth. So what are the implications of these things? It makes the Nigerian economy unsafe for doing business, unsafe for the average citizen, unsafe for doing business. Okay, and as your country becomes unsafe for unsafe, for doing business, you then realize that either firms have to spend more on security, okay, securing their properties in one way or the other, their goods and whatever, or they just have to shut down operations in some places, because of course you don't want your managers to be kidnapped, you don't want your CEO to be kidnapped, and so on and so forth. All of these contractions also have effect on the rate at which the country grows. If you have firms shutting down, if you have firms laying off workers, as a result of crime, and crime which was birthed from which has inflation as one of its basis. All right, all of those things is going to lower your GDP. Okay, as a nation. So you can see now that inflation and unemployment, okay, leading to crime, leading to unsafe business environment, it's cutting back on the country's GDP. So see the way it's affecting the country's growth. So that's another point. All right, and I also mentioned that you have students that are abroad, that you pay their school, that families pay their school fees in foreign currency, and being unable to afford their school fees, or finding it difficult to pay their school fees. So what is going to happen? Some of them might have to stop their education, right? There is a tendency, because you look at it, maybe 315 naira to a dollar before 670. That's a lot. Although it's not even easy to send your kids out there, education is expensive already in foreign countries. Then you now have your currency depreciating, and what have you. Things just become really bad. Then you have government policies that are not really making sense. Okay, so everything coupled together with everything together means that the children abroad, or students abroad, may have to suspend their education, or as a result of being unable to pay on time, or being unable to pay at all. And what is the implication of that on the economy? These are students that have studied abroad, that when they are done are likely going to, if not all of them, at least some of them are likely going to come back into the country, set up businesses, with what they've learned abroad, being exposed in a developed country. They might be able to develop technologies, okay, that are suitable for the Nigerian economy. So they've acquired some knowledge, they've acquired some things, some ideas that they might acquire some ideas, some things that they can implement in this country. You understand, to make the country better, which could have led to invention, innovation, and better business practices, all of those things. But because they are cutting the education short, these things are not going to happen. And if they had happened, that would have had an impact on Nigeria's long-run economic growth. So we are not even talking about the present one right now. We are talking about long-run when the students are done, those ones are going to come in out of students that are studied abroad, and now you cutting short what they are, cutting short their education. So they can't really they've not finished studying, right? So there's a negative, effect of that on to how well they can improve Nigeria's economy. So we are not just talking about Nigeria's economic growth now. So you are also already impairing Nigeria's future economic growth. So which means that Nigeria's economic growth in the short run, as well as in the long run, is understand. So these are ways in which I've been able to relate. These are ways I've been able to relate the problems inflation is causing on Nigeria's economic growth. And as I'm writing all of those things, if you are able to put them together, I'm writing all of those things. I get to look for journals. I get to look for articles that have spoken about some of the problems, so that I can cite them. Okay, I can cite them how inflation has been leading to poor living standards of people. So from one or two journals or three or four that I've read, cite this author, put them there. Okay, so you understand. So it becomes rich. Now, by the time someone reads that, okay, inflation is detrimental to Nigeria's economic growth in the short and in the long run, and from the things I've explained, oh wow, this thing has to be, taken care of. This thing has to be looked into. This course of action, this situation has to change. So you've been able to kind of convince your supervisor, to convince whoever is able to read your work, that inflation is indeed a grave issue that has to be curbed. So with that, your chapter 1 is on its way. In fact, with a good introduction, I think chapter 1 is already on its way to being approved, and you being asked to continue with your research. Now from there we go into what's next. Research objectives. So here is, I as a researcher, what are my aims, why am I carrying this, why am I carrying out this research? Okay, why am I not doing poverty and economic growth? Why am I doing inflation and economic growth? So what are my research objectives? So for me, my research objective could be, okay, to evaluate, or to evaluate or ascertain, or whatever grammar I want to use, the impact of inflation on Nigeria's economic growth. Okay, that's one objective. Then my second objective could be to check there's a way I wrote it here, and I don't want to deviate from it. Where is it? Okay, I think that's just it, to demonstrate how dangerous inflation can be to Nigeria's economic growth, especially in recent times. Okay, to demonstrate, that's my own research objective. Okay, your own can be different. That's why I'm into this stuff. That's why I want to study this thing. Okay, so it is to demonstrate how dangerous inflation can be to Nigeria's economic growth. So it could look at that there's a presumption, like I'm already presuming, or I'm already thinking that my results are going to be in a particular way, but I just have to be sincere. That is why I'm carrying out this research. Now the result may tend to follow what my objective is, and it may not, but that is my own objective. So I might eventually carry the research and the result is different, so it reinforces my objective, whatever, but that is my own objective, just can be different. Okay, then from there we go into the research questions. The research questions are supposed to be from a research objective, so you don't just go and copy research question from related project, dump it inside your own work and then continue. No. Now what are my research questions? 1. Does inflation have any effect on Nigeria's economic growth? That's my first research question. Okay. Then 2. How strongly does inflation affect Nigeria's economic growth in the short run and in the long run? I already mentioned the impact of inflation on students' education abroad, and how that might hamper Nigeria's future economic growth. That's economic growth in the long run. Okay. So here I'm already under my research questions. I'm already saying, okay, how strong does inflation affect Nigeria's economic growth in the short run and in the long run? So those are just the two research questions that I have. So if you look at this critically, I'm just kind of talking about the a priori expectations of inflation and economic growth. So I'm talking about, does it have any effect, and how does it affect it, and how big, or what's the size, I'm talking about how big or small is the impact of inflation on Nigeria's economic growth. So that's what a priori expectation is basically about. Is there a relationship? One, what kind of relationship? Is it plus or minus? And what is the size? So you're looking about the coefficients of your independent variables after you've done your regression and whatever it is. So you may not understand what I'm saying, and until we get to chapter 4 or whatever, and you may understand if you've gone through your econometrics classes, in theory level, you've read about, you've known about, or you've been taught a priori expectations before, but it's not a problem. So from there, we then move into the significance of the study. Now, significance of the study is talking about who are the people that are going to benefit from your research work. So that's the way I see it. Who are the people that are going to benefit from your research work? That is fine. I want to study inflation, okay, impact of inflation on economic reports. At the end of the day, does it concern anybody? Is anybody really like? Is it anybody's business? Like, are people really interested in this thing? Does it have any impact on people? Okay, so why should people be concerned about what I'm doing? Something like that. So who are the people that are, affected? Okay, by this thing. How significant is the number of these people, and so on and so forth. So you can also find other reasons. Okay, around other reasons that you can include in your as that you can include in this particular section. So one of the significance of my study is to make I believe the Nigerian government is going to be interested in this thing, because it's eventually going to show that inflation has to be critically tackled. It has to be tackled. There has to be more measures in tackling inflation than the measures that are in place right now. Okay, then number 2, to contribute to knowledge. Okay, one of the reasons why this study is going to be important is that at the end of the day, it's going to contribute to the knowledge of students, okay, of economics basically and related fields. It's going to contribute to what researchers are doing. It's going to contribute to body of knowledge generally. Then another significance is that at the end of the day, okay, this research is going to be important in how do I put it, in highlighting the places that policymakers have to look at in suggesting and implementing policies to tackle inflation. So don't mind the way I've said these things, but I just hope you've grasped something, you've taken something. So we are trying to say, okay, why is my work important? That's the significance of the study. Why is my work important? Who are the people that my work is going to affect? Why is my work important? Okay, who are the people that my work is going to affect? So here, you may not necessarily include any citation. It's talking about you. Okay, what are the things you consider that will make your work important to people? Okay, so, and is it important at all? So significance, importance. Why is my work important? Okay, so from there we move into scope of the study. So scope of the study, as I've explained in an earlier class, is just talking about the duration of your study. And I also mentioned that this particular course is about should I call it secondary research? Okay, it's talking about, we are not using primary data, you'll be using secondary data. Okay, data from reputable, respectable sources. All right, so here, scope of the study, looking at the duration. Okay, and I think I told that it has to be at least 30 years, might be more, maybe 35 or 40, or at least 30 years. So you have from 1965, if you have the data, available, 1965 to 2019, 2020. Okay, or 1980, 1983, 1984, or 1986 to 2019. So after mentioning the scope of that study, you have to explain why you chose that. Why didn't you choose another set of years, another time period? Why didn't you expand your time period? Why didn't you contract your time period? So let's say you're talking about 60 something years. Okay, why didn't you make 30 something years? Or let's say you're talking about 30 something years. Why didn't you make it 40 something years? Make it 50. Why aren't you making it 50 something years? Okay, so you have to defend it. Okay, so if you start from maybe 1986 or something like that, you may say you're looking at the post-SAP period in Nigeria, for example, the structural adjustment program. After it has been implemented, so how has inflation affected Nigeria's economic growth? That might be one reason. Another reason might be you looking at a particular period. Okay, the rates, the way the average price level has gone up in the past 3 years is a matter of concern. So that is why you are including it in your time frame. So you are trying to compare those set of years with years preceding it. So different, it depends on you. I can't speak for you. It depends on why you have chosen those years. So this is something that you're interested in. It is something you want to work on. So interested in, maybe you are really interested in it, or you just want to do it for the grade. I don't know, but you must have a reason, a strong reason, because if you don't have a strong reason, your supervisor is likely going to change your scope for you. Okay, so that's not about that. Your assignment in this particular video is going to be for you to write your chapter 1. Okay, this is going to include all of these things, and it must not be more than 450 words. 450 words maximum. Okay, so don't write 200 words for me. So don't write within just 450 words. You must make sure it's 450 words. Okay, maximum. So maybe between 440 to 450. Alright, so let me say between 420 words to 450 words. So maximum, don't go beyond that. And yeah, so that's it. So next, in our next class, we'll be talking about background to the study, or background, is it background of the study, or whatever it is. I'm going to talk about that in our chapter 2. So thank you for watching. Make sure you do your assignment. Now, as mentioned before, that this is a practical course. So as we are going, we are progressing in developing your own project. So thank you very much, and see you in the next class.